Welcome, everyone, on behalf of the European Movement International's offices in Brussels, to the next edition of Talking Europe, an event series launched in 2020 in partnership with the European Commission in an effort to foster a debate on what the European Union and its institutions have been doing for its citizens. For this edition, we will be focusing a lot on the European Parliament and the upcoming European elections, which will be held between 6th and 9th of June 2024. Today, we are very lucky and privileged to be joined by Daniel Freund MEP, a member of the European Parliament from Germany, representing the Greens EFA group. Daniel, thank you very much for being with us. It's really a pleasure. I know how busy you are running a campaign. Perhaps to kick off this conversation, I think it'd be very interesting to sort of take stock of the work that you have been doing in the last 5 years and the European Parliament has been doing in the last 5 years, because as your first term comes to a close, what do you think are 2-3 main achievements or milestones that you think you've achieved as an MEP in these last years?
Yeah, I would mention 3 things. Probably the biggest success was to freeze money for Orban and the PiS government in Poland. At some point, there were 140 billion euros of EU funds frozen for corruption, for violation of EU's fundamental values, particularly the rule of law. The second success, I would say, is that for the first time, we initiated treaty change from the European Parliament. I was one of the rapporteurs for that, that in a way, we don't have the right of initiative for legislation, but for treaty change we do, and we used it for the first time. So that's the second success. And
Excellent.
The third thing, and that was one of the last votes we took before the election now, and something that I personally had championed for many years, is that there be independent oversight of our ethics and lobbying rules. So there will now be an independent ethics body. I'm going to sign the declaration with Ursula von der Leyen and the other institutions in a couple of days. So that, I would say, is the third success.
Excellent. And this already shows how busy and also how many issues have been covered in the last 5 years. Because if you look at the work of the European Parliament and institutions in general, the ECS have been really a lot about decision-making, policy-making, and what we are expecting for the next mandate will be a lot of implementation. And looking at the upcoming European elections, what do you think are the key issues or topics, or perhaps even concerns, that you think voters are very much caring about?
Well, I spend a lot of time right now talking to voters, lots of discussions. I think foreign policy is playing a big role. Ukraine, the situation in Gaza, I get a lot. Climate change is still very much there in the intersection with, you know, how is our economic development going to look like over the next few years. But I think for the climate, this might actually turn out to be the most decisive European election ever, because we have embarked now on this Green Deal, but will we continue? Will we finish the Green Deal, or will we scrap it and kick everything out again? So I'm not sure whether this next term will be about implementation. It might be a rollback, depending on how this election goes. But I think the third element that I would say is the whole question of, you know, unanimity, capacity to act, broader reform for the European Union. I get a lot of questions about this, you know, that Orban is constantly blocking us, blackmailing us with his veto, is something that we have to address, particularly if we want to be serious about our promise, you know, of potential enlargement to Ukraine, Moldova, and the Balkan countries. So I think lots to debate. Unfortunately, in most national contexts, it's the performance of the national government that is on top of the agenda. And I'm trying my very best to explain to voters, whatever you think about your national government, they're not up for election. You're voting the members of the parliament and thereby determining who will be the Commission president. That's what this election is all about.
Indeed, and it's a great reminder to the fact that what we define as European elections is actually a set of 27 national elections. So, of course, and if I can follow up on something that you said that I find very interesting, and that is also, as you know, very much close to the work that we do at the European Movement, it's very interesting to hear that citizens, potential voters, want to understand better how the European Union works when they ask you about decision-making or voting rights. And you've mentioned Orban, you've mentioned the veto power that these countries have, and in an effort often quite successful, unfortunately, to block or delay decisions. So do you think that these issues, especially linked to these very clear authoritarian tendencies that we've experiencing in several countries, because lately the conversation was much a lot Hungary for very good reason, but we've also seen a tendency towards more authoritarian tendencies in other countries. And do you think this will play a big role in this campaign in the elections?
Definitely. I mean, the shift to extreme right, to Eurosceptic parties, we all see what's happening in the polls. We also see the foreign interference. We see Russian and Chinese support, often to these very same parties. So I think one of the big questions, ultimately, in a way, for the day after the election is, what does the majority look like that elects the next Commission president, right? And it looks in the polling like the current coalition of Christian Democrats, Social Democrats, and Liberals might either not have a majority or a very slim majority that is not solid enough. And with that, the big question for, well, von der Leyen, in a way, does she want to extend her coalition with the Greens and have a pro-European democratic coalition? Or is she looking to the extreme right and bringing in people like Fratelli d'Italia or others from the ECR in particular? In the first Spitzen debate in Maastricht, she was very open to a coalition with the ECR. She said, you know, if that's what the election result is like, she would do it. And well, I'm doing everything to prevent that the enemies of European integration come to power in the European Union.
Yeah. So would you say, it's a bit of a provocative question, do you say that the European democracy is in danger, if there's an actual threat to democracy in Europe?
Absolutely, because, I mean, Hungary is no longer a functioning democracy. You know, the European Parliament with a very large majority said this is an electoral autocracy. And we have seen anti-democratic tendencies in Slovakia, in Poland for a long time under the previous governments, and attacks on media freedom, on minorities, on independence of the judiciary in a number of member states. And you know, it's not God-given that the European Union, you know, works towards deeper integration, remains democratic. This depends on majorities. So if you put anti-democrats, if you put authoritarians, illiberals in power, also in the European Union, well, they will do what they are promising. They will abolish these kind of institutions also at the level, at the European level. So we as Democrats need to stand united against this and make sure that we don't put them into power. And I think there, the Conservatives in particular have an important role, because we have seen whenever fascists and anti-democrats have come to power, they don't do this alone. They need someone that, you know, goes into coalition with them. Meloni in Italy, we see it in other EU countries. And the big question for European Conservatives in this election will be, will they do that in the European Parliament and with the next European Commission or not? And I'm fighting towards the, you know, for the cordon sanitaire. I don't want these people in power in the European Union.
Okay, you gave me the right assist to my next question, because you've mentioned the fact that democratic forces need to come together. There's this need for, you know, working together to counter these anti-democratic or fully authoritarian tendencies that you've just mentioned. What do you suggest as a strategy to bring together these likely-minded democratic forces, also with the support of civil society and other actors, especially when it's about the protection of democracy and the rule of law, which has been one of the key, if not most relevant, sort of issues for your mandate, if I may?
Yeah. But you also see in what I mentioned earlier as the biggest successes, all these successes were ultimately with large coalitions.
Indeed.
You know, from the EPP, S&D, Renew, Greens, and often the left as well. So I have worked very hard to keep this broad coalition on board, because on things like the rule of law or treaty change, if you don't have that coalition, you're likely not going to go very far. So often, I realize this is going slower than I would like. This is requiring compromises from me that I don't necessarily want to do, but I know that we are stronger together.
And it
that,
works. You've said it. Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
So I will continue that work.
Certainly. Absolutely. If I can just finish this conversation with more of a personal question, is there that wish that you would like to see for these elections, whether it's about representation but also participation? Because recently the European Parliament issued a spring Eurobarometer about the elections, and it seems quite, let's say, ambitious but also promising in terms of participation. And I think it was also very interesting to see that for the first time citizens really expressed a lot of trust in the work for the European Parliament, which I think was, I remember when the Director General presented it, he was very happy to see that, because I guess it means that, and it's shown that the European Parliament has delivered, if you look at these results. Is there a link to that, a specific wish, something that you really would like to see on the morning of the 10th of June?
I mean, what I really want to see is that pro-European Democrats show up in big numbers in these elections. We all have things that we criticize and that we want to change in the European Union, in the European Parliament, also in the policies that we do. But ultimately, the kind of freedoms, also, the living standard, the comfort that we have in the EU is really not too bad. But none of this is a given. We have seen with Brexit, we see what happens in Hungary or what has happened in Poland. Us Democrats, we need to stand up, and democracy needs to be defended every single day. So please go out, please vote. In Germany and a number of other countries, for the first time, we have the voting age 16. So we need to bring all these first-time voters to the ballot, and hopefully, offer solutions. Not just, we can all criticize things. It's much more difficult to give answers to the big challenges of our time. I think we're trying that as Greens. Others are trying as well, but voters need to go out and choose which vision they find most attractive, and don't fall for the lies, the hate, and all the bullshit basically that you see on TikTok, and vote for Democrats.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. I think this was very, very interesting, and good luck with your campaign.
Thank you.
And thank you all very much for tuning in and listening to this edition. More are coming up, so stay tuned and don't hesitate to get in touch and to follow the European Movement International.